be my inspiration and purpose. My words not just be my own vain words, but may we all receive inspiration from your Holy Scripture. Amen. Well, I'm just going to touch a few points on the Gospel before I go on to my main text. Of course, I don't have a main text because I didn't print it out, but I did, however, write it. So there is some vague recollection of it still staying within my head. Now, the Gospel text does not say bridesmaids. It says virgins. Now, the principle is that I think later translators were a bit prissy about the idea of a whole bunch of virgins going into the chamber with the groom. But it says virgins. And the point being, of course, that we are to see ourselves as the virgin waiting for the groom. You know, that our reunification with Christ is a consummation of our human life. There's a lot of gender-bending language in the Christian tradition about us as the bride and Christ as the groom. So I got that out of the way because it was irritating me. So now let's go on to Amos, or Amos, depending on which side of the Atlantic you come from. Here we have a very charming 1960s, possibly, painting of the rapture going on there. The Parousia. It's a fairly new doctrine, possibly a couple of hundred years old, but it's one that's very deeply ingrained in the Christianity of our time. When I am going to rephrase or paraphrase Amos, therefore I'm not speaking directly against any particular doctrine. I'm just putting Amos into words which would apply to the church today. Shame on you who desire the rapture. Why do you want the rapture? It's darkness, it's not going to be light. As if you jumped from the frying pan and ended up into the fire. Or if you'd gone into the woods and you'd sat down for a rest and you discovered that you're in the middle of a patch of poison ivy. Is not the rapture darkness, not light, and gloom with no brightness in it? I cannot stand, I despise your revivals, your tent meetings, your solemn masses. I take no delight in your mega-churches and cathedrals. Even though you have offered me your tithe from your great wealth, I will not accept them. And the shreds of all you claim ownership over, I will not look upon. Take away from me. Silence the noise of your praise bands and guitars, your organs and pianos, your choirs. I will not listen to their melody, but let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness, loving kindness, like an ever-flowing stream. You put it into modern words, and it's considerably more uncomfortable than it was. Writing against Jewish practice, which we have no concept of, oh, that's all very well good. You can join in on that. Somebody's having to go at the Jews, look. But it's against us, of course. It is against the outward things with no inward thing. It is against the outward signs with no inward grace. It is all about the motivation of the heart, and how those outward things cannot work their way inward and bring transformation with no inward motivation, with no inward craving for God, no matter how deeply and imperfectly it's embedded. And in most of us, it is very deeply and imperfectly embedded. That doesn't matter. There's an old Scottish expression, which I'm going to paraphrase because it's rude, and I don't want to say it from the pulpit. You can't polish dung. That's the Scottish expression. And so much of our great festivals and masses and praise bands and revivals is all about polishing dung. If there's nothing there, then no amount of grandeur will make it acceptable to Almighty God. But remember that if you feed a beast even the tiniest fleck of gold, it will pass all the way through its digestive system and end up in the dung. And if you are willing, after some very unpleasant and tedious work, to recover that gold is just as good as any newly smelted gold from the earth. So no, you can't polish down, but you can recover the gold. And that gold can be flattened out and gild the world, make it shiny and beautiful again. So when we look at the motivation of our hearts, it's vital to practice self-examination. No religious practice is worth anything if there's no self-examination behind it. Self-examination can very easily become self-hatred, and that's completely beside the point. If you end up hating yourself, then you're missing the point. The point is not to despise yourself. The point is to discover what you have to give to God. What are you offering to God? You can say, I give myself to you, God. I give myself to you, Jesus. And what does that mean if you don't know yourself? What does it mean if you've never examined deep within? What does it mean if you haven't examined and paid attention to and worked with the motivations of your heart? The term, often translated as righteousness, is a little more complex than that. Righteousness may well have done it a few hundred years ago. Now you'd really have to say it's an amalgam of altruism and the old word loving kindness. Altruism and loving kindness. You could also call it charity. The idea that when something enters your life or your frame of reference, what is your automatic response to it? Is it charitable? Is it seeking for the light? Or is it uncharitable and seeking for the dark? Is your initial response when presented with another human being or a situation or a possibility or something in church or something that is preached or some piece of music, is it from the man of dust? Or is it from the man of heaven? Now, we can only find that when we examine ourselves in imitation of Christ. That's a little more complex than just wearing a "what would Jesus do" bracelet, because in my experience, that doesn't always seem to do an awful lot of good. No token or slogan will cut it. No convenient meme on Facebook will go below the surface. This is deep burrowing. This is the mining of a lifetime. It's something we do together. We all do it together. We can't do it on our own. Because some of the greatest insights about ourselves come from the interactions and the loving interactions we have with other people. Therefore, we're coming up to Advent. Advent is often looked upon as a time of penitence. But a time of self-examination is perhaps a better way of saying it. So let us use Advent and all the facilities which are going to be available. We have an online Advent retreat with Dr. Chris Glaser, who's an amazing character, extraordinary theologian. We have Advent services every Wednesday, which give an extraordinary chance to examine what we're going towards. We're going towards the incarnation of God in human flesh. The very God, the very man. It's not just a day in the calendar. If it is to have any transformational effect on your lives, it cannot be just another day in the calendar. If it's going to have an effect on my life, it can't. So this Advent, self-examination with charity, because it's all about telling the truth in love, and it's all about finding the truth in love. Because you were given in love, you were made in love, you will die in love, you will be gathered to God in love. Therefore, this self-examination must be done in love.